Viking Preparedness. I'm Pastor Joe Fox. So, in times of crisis, in times of emergency, decisions are made. Decisions are acted upon. And things start taking on a life of their own. You know, activities, the wheel starts spinning. And typically, you are either an actor or an actee. You are either making things happen or you're watching things happen to you. And so this video is about decision making, and I will try to give you some tools, techniques, and procedures that can maybe help you make decisions when decisions are vital. Example, it's really not that important for most of us what we have for breakfast. The decision for what you're going to eat for breakfast, not a big deal. So you can mess around with it, you can mess it up, and your life is not going to change. The decision that you make, I'm trying to switch hands here. The decision that you make in the wake of some huge emergency or crisis could have lifelong, even if that's only a short period of time, ramifications to you and yours. All right, so in times of crises, people get emotional. Why do they get emotional? Because they're scared. And so they just start doing crazy things. You've heard the phrase running around with your hair on fire. I can sense fear in the populace now from my videos. I see comments that people make, and it's like, wow, that was uncalled for. That was nasty. That was a knee-jerk reaction. That was you assuming incorrectly things. And now we're well fed. I'm warm, I'm dry. I have a hot cup of Joe, and you do too. If you're acting like that now, what are you going to do when you see a mushroom cloud on the near horizon, right? So, first thing is, and this is difficult for some people, I know we're not all wired the same. You have to calm down. Breathe. Do not let the emotional side of your brain take over. If the emotional side of your brain is typically in charge, you need to flick it over to the logical side of your brain, the thinking part of your brain. Slow down, slow your breathing down, slow your talking down. That'll slow your mind down a little bit, because your mind's going to be going a bazillion miles an hour. Most first reports are wrong. Let's say you hear that the British just shot down over Syria a Russian fighter, and the Russians are bombing a British airbase in the Middle East. Okay. You know from watching the news and following stories, you know, about mass shootings or whatever, as the details come out, they change. Now, a lot of times, that's the MSM trying to shape and mold what they want you to know, hear, believe. But a lot of times it's because first facts are wrong. So the first thing you have to do is get enough facts to make good decisions. You have to start sucking in all the data you can. Radio, TV, internet, calling people who know, texting, you know, whatever you can. What if an EMP goes off? You can't do any of that. Well, then you're just going to have to gather the best information you can where you're at. Do what you can with what you got where you're at. Gather the information. But you have to do this rapidly. There has to be a cutoff point. There's this thing called paralysis by analysis, right? I need more facts to make a decision. I need more facts. No, you've got enough facts to make a decision right now. Make a decision, start acting on it, and if you have to modify it later, you can. And so consider that. Don't run off half-cocked, but don't wait around forever. This is the first teaching point. Don't wait around forever for more information to come in. Get a bunch of information, as much as you can in a short period of time, and start acting on it. The next thing you have to think about is not what happened, not just what happened, but what's going to happen next. Okay, so another example. New Madrid. Boom! You just hear that New Madrid went off, and let's assume for now you don't live in a New Madrid fault zone. So you didn't feel a thing, but you just heard that the New Madrid earthquake may have gone off. Reports are coming in of a very large, strong earthquake in New Madrid. All right, well, fact gathering. If you're not in the earthquake zone, you can get on one of many sites, and very quickly they tell you what how strong that earthquake was. And you're like, wow, that was a big earthquake. That was an 8.6. That was a 9.2. You know, that was a 8.0, whatever. Big earthquake. Okay, you've got that information. Now is not the time to start reading the detailed reports coming out of Nashville and St. Louis. You have the information you need to act, or you should. What is New Madrid going to do? See, this part you should already know, because it's one of the big things that can affect our country. It's going to knock out, probably, if it's a big one, and it'll be a big one, every bridge south of St. Louis across the Mississippi. Underneath those bridges flow oil and gas pipelines. Underneath those bridges flow fiber optic cables. When they go down, all that goes down. Okay? What's that mean? That means no gas is coming into the East Coast in large. You know, you thought that one little pipe break was something recently on the East Coast. New Madrid goes off, no gas. And the gas that gets through is going to be diverted to critical rescue efforts and things like that. You ain't getting any gas. Even if you live in Montana, your gas supply is going to probably, I submit to you, be affected quickly. So a quick decision you need to make is, what is my gas situation? Are your cars topped off? Are your spare tanks topped off? If not, launch Junior down to the Quick Trip to fill up the gas. You go fill up the gas, all right? Because very quickly, there won't be any gas available for you. Probably. That's my assessment. You may come to a different assessment. So that's one thing. What's the next thing that's going to happen? Certainly martial law of some kind in the affected area. But is it possible with the administration it is that they'll try to do some kind of national, thing, never let a good crisis go to waste kind of thing? Maybe. Okay, well, what would that mean to you? Example to me, out here. Nothing, right? I don't need any more ammo. I don't need any more food. I don't need. Could I use more? Always. Am I going to go run to Walmart to buy the last box of bullets because they may be putting a ban on them? Are you kidding me? I've got more important things to do right now. But you need to think about that. What are the effects going to be on you? So don't just do a knee-jerk reaction. Oh my God, this happened. Let's run around with our hair on fire. That happened. What happens next? So that's an assessment on your part. You're just going to have to do the best you can. This has happened. What's going to happen next? And then based on that, if I think this is going to happen, and in military terms, we call that courses of action, right? Enemy courses of action. I think this is probably the most dangerous course of action the enemy is going to take. I think this is the most dangerous thing that can result from this event that just happened to me. Or I think this is the most likely. Those are both things that you need to deal with, the most dangerous and the most likely. And then, how is that going to affect me personally, me-ish? Because your big deal may not be that you need to go get more MREs. Your big deal may be this whole system is going to fall apart like a house of cards, and I still don't have my firewood, and I know Bob has a big load of firewood that he sells to people by the truckload. I'm going to go get firewood right now. See, you're beating the rush. And so you tell Bob, I need 3 dump trucks full of firewood delivered to my driveway. And Bob's like, really? You're like, yep. Because it'll take everybody else about 2 weeks to figure out while the oil and gas pipelines are crunked. None of our houses have heat. Winter's here. I need firewood. And they won't have it. So you kind of thought through that process. And I'm just making this up as I go along. But the bottom line is figure out what comes next after the particular event, and then how does that affect you? What's the most dangerous thing that can happen? What's the most important thing that, what's the most likely thing that can happen? Here's the other thing. Before you run to Bob's, just sticking with the analogy, to get 2 dump truck loads full of firewood, go through your own courses of action. All right. There's not going to be any heat. Well, that's going to affect me because it's cold here and I'm not going to have any winter heat now. Well, the first thing I could do is go to Bob's, get firewood. Okay, that's your first thing. It's your default. It's probably going to be the correct answer, but you don't know that. So make yourself think of 2 other things to do. Example, All right, it's going to be cold this winter. We're not going to have heating oil, assuming that's what your house is heated with. Stick with me. You can make up your own analogy for something else. All right, firewood, yep, that's what I want to do. But what else could I do? Sleeping bags. I'm going to get everybody those Army 3-bag systems in the house. So I got to get 6 sleeping bags. Okay, where do they sell those? Cabela's. Okay, Cabela's is over there. All right, how much is that going to cost me? This much. I'm going to put it on my credit card. Okay, you just solved that problem. That's another course of action. I'm going to get sleeping bags. Come up with a third course of action. All right, I could get wood. I could get that. I could get a generator and gas for the generator and just fire up my furnace that way. You know, whatever. Little buddy heaters and propane, you know, something. And then do a quick assessment of those. Which one is really the best idea? Most of the time, your course of action 1 will end up being the best course of action, especially if it's something that you have dealt with before. But if it's something brand new, I'm not speaking ill words over you now. I'm not giving these words any power over your life. But let's say an emergency, if some huge event happens, systems are shut down temporarily, permanently, you don't know, and your little girl falls down and has a bone sticking out of her arm. And you're not a medical person at all. We got to go to the hospital. Okay, that's course of action 1. But depending on where you live and what's going on and who you are, maybe your drive to the hospital, I'm trying to break a spider web here, maybe your drive to the hospital will be fraught with more peril than staying home and calling that paramedic that lives 2 blocks over that you met at the barbecue, you know, last summer. That might be a better solution, because if you go through the riot zone, you might not come back out. So slow yourself down and think of options. Don't just knee-jerk react to what you're going to do, and then go through different courses of action. Give yourself flexibility. Give yourself potential backups. An example, if you went through these courses of action and you decide, okay, hospital, going to the hospital, got to take her to the hospital. Ambulance won't come, I'll drive her. Okay, course of action 1. Make yourself think of course of action 2. Oh yeah, I met that guy, he's a paramedic, he lives, 8 houses down. I could go ask him. And then you come up with course of action 3 and you decide, all right, we're going to the hospital. So you get in the car and you start driving to the hospital, and for whatever reason, you can't get there, right? Whatever reason, doesn't matter. You're not going to make it to the hospital. Well, you've already worked on 2 other courses of action. You can turn around and go put one of them into effect instead of sitting there stuck in traffic, or you see a riot up ahead and you're like, oh, what are we going to do? You already know what you're going to do. You're going to turn around. You're going to go back with course of action 2, which is the paramedic. Things like that. But you got to engage your brain, not your emotion. Your brain, not your heart. And you have to think things through. Now, the best way to make decisions is to play what-if games with yourself all the time. And I do that all the time. I have thought, I've gotten to the point, I've done all the common ones. I have actually considered what happens if right now, right through there, a charging bear snorting comes running through. What am I going to do? I've gone through those things. What I'm going to do. What that does, and then you don't just say, I stand my ground, pull out my 9 and start popping it. You got to actually think that through. All right, what would that look like? If I'm shooting this thing with a 9, am I hitting it? What if I'm not and it's running towards me? Dun, 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 dun. Is this the best course of action? Maybe me running down this really steep hill over here is a better course of action because bears don't run down hills very well. That kind of thing. But if you ask yourself what-if questions and then war game it in your head, think through the process. Okay, I'd do this. Well, if I did that, what would happen? And if that happened, I would do this and that, and think it through. Don't just think, I'll do this and everything will be fine. Because a lot of people default to that. Wishing doesn't make it so. Start working on your critical thinking. Start working on your non-emotional decision making. Start considering lots of options before you drop the hammer, before you make the final decision. But learn to do that rapidly. Avoid paralysis by analysis. You have to make a decision. but make a good one. Your life and the lives of your loved ones may depend on it. All right. Hey, I'll see you out there.